There's a very interesting article in Politico called "Trump Didn't Kill Reaganism, These Guys Did." And I start reading the article, and who are these guys who supposedly killed Reaganism before Trump? Turns out that it's Rush Limbaugh and Pat Buchanan and Newt Gingrich and, me. We are apparently the notorious gang that killed off Reaganism even before Trump. The article is an interview with a professor, a woman named Nicole Hemmer. Nicole Hemmer is an academic who studies the right, the conservative side of the aisle, the Republicans. And she has an upcoming book called Partisans, the Conservative Revolutionaries Who Remade American Politics in the 1990s. I'm evidently one of these. And I told Debbie, I go, let's see if we can get Nicole Hemmer to come on the podcast. It'd be fun to actually talk directly about these things because she's writing about a period that I, of course, remember well and was part of. Now, Nicole Hemmer's theory in the book, and I'm only gleaning it from her interview, but it's a pretty in-depth interview with Politico, is that it's wrong to think of Trump as having created a new Republican Party. What she's really arguing is that the new Republican Party created Trump. There was a new Republican Party that was forged in the late 1990s and the early 2000s, and that's the movement that brought Trump to the forefront. So Trump articulated the views of this new movement, but the new movement was created by people like former House Speaker Gingrich and Buchanan. And of course, Nicole Hemmer, who was, by the way, never a fan of Reagan, is now sort of, and this is often a strategy of the left, you now pretend to be kind of a defender of Reagan, go, isn't it a pity that kind of conservatism died with Reagan? And what we have now is evidently not conservatism in the Reaganite sense. Nicole Hemmer goes on to say that what these people like Dinesh do today is they extol Reaganism and they proclaim to be followers of the Reagan movement, but they have been the architects of a kind of anti-Reaganism or this new MAGA Republican Party. And there's a lot to say in this article. I probably will talk about it today a little bit. And I might pick it up again tomorrow because she makes 3 or 4 key points I want to comment on. I'll probably only get to one of them today. So she begins by saying, this is Nicole Hemmer, even if Trump hadn't won the presidency in 2016, even if he hadn't won the Republican nomination, the changes in the Republican Party had taken place. Now, what's she referring to here? She says that this is how she defines Reaganism, the idea of an American engagement in the world. What she seems to be saying is we are now in the opposite, a kind of American disengagement within the world. And that is at least what the MAGA Republicans want. The idea of an upbeat, optimistic conservatism. And what she seems to be saying is what we have now is an advocacy of a kind of non-upbeat, non-optimistic, kind of darker conservatism. And then she says, and a big tent Republican Party. And evidently she's suggesting that those of us who are the architects of this new republicanism want a small tent Republican Party. Now, let me suggest on the face of it that none of this could be further from the truth. First of all, while Trump criticized the aggressive deployment of U.S. troops in fruitless wars that cost us blood and treasure, that's not the same as saying that America should be disengaged from the world. Trump was not disengaged from the world. Trump dealt regularly with our NATO allies, asking only that they pay their share of the NATO dues. Trump engaged with China. He engaged with the Islamic world. So engagement is a matter of recognizing who your friends and who your enemies are. A critique of Biden foreign policy is that Biden treats our enemies like friends and our friends like enemies. And so no one is calling for a disengagement. Second of all, it's probably true that the mood today is less upbeat than it was under Reagan. In part, it's because we're seeing the depredations of the Biden administration and of the Democrats. We're seeing previously inviolable rights like free speech, freedom of religion, equal rights under the laws being trampled by this regime. This is why the sort of, you may say, more ominous tone. And the Republican Party, far from being a smaller tent, is a bigger tent than ever before. In fact, Trump has made headway, and Republicans are making headway now with groups like blacks, particularly black males, and Hispanics, to an even greater extent than Reagan did. So, and are doing so, by the way, on a platform that calls for building a wall and securing the border. Reagan was actually not that ferocious about the issue of border security. Maybe the situation was a little different then, but nevertheless, while emphasizing border security, Republicans are making inroads in places like the south part of Texas, which Reagan was able to make some gains there, but not as much as Trump. Debbie makes the point. She goes, "I've never seen as many trucks and the Trump. There was Reagan support, but there were no Reagan trains in the Rio Grande Valley in the way that there have been Trump trains." So Nicole Hemmer here, I think, misunderstands the way in which there is a new Republican Party, but it's not because we've abandoned Reaganism, but it's because we're applying Reaganism, if you will, to a completely different situation.